Hello, my name is Lorraine, and this is the story of how I found romance in a swimming Polish pool with Franklin. The truth is, I was practically dragged there by my doctor. "It'll be good for your joints," he said. "Great for circulation, your spine, and your mind too." Little did he know that what really hurt wasn't my knee or my lower back. It was the emptiness of days that all looked the same. The silence of long, hollow nights, the touch I hadn't felt in years. I was 59 and had been divorced for 8. The end of the marriage had been peaceful, but far from painless. When we say goodbye to someone who shared so much of our lives, it's not just the person who leaves. The routine goes too, the plans, even the name in the picture frame. At first, I filled my time with the kids, the grandkids, embroidery, and books. But there was still a space inside me no hobby could reach. And that's how I ended up there. Navy blue swimsuit, tight swim cap, and a ridiculous sense of discomfort. The other women in the class seemed much more cheerful, some even laughing together. I just wanted the class to be over so I could go back home, to my little safe space, even if it was lonely. The moment I sank my body into the warm water, I shivered, and it wasn't from the cold. It felt like I was trespassing in a place that no longer belonged to me. The instructor, far too enthusiastic for my taste, kept telling us to lift our arms, roll our shoulders, raise our knees in the water. My body resisted, but my mind resisted even more. I'm not made for this, I thought. This isn't for me. And yet, there I was, going against my own will. But maybe, deep down, hoping something, anything, would pull me out of the stillness I had unknowingly sunk into. During one of those exercises, I looked up at the ceiling and thought, what have I done with my life? It was a question that visited me often. To others, I seemed like a strong, independent woman, a sweet, well-adjusted grandmother. But the truth was, I was tired of pretending that solitude was comfortable. It wasn't. It was just quiet. And sometimes, it was in that quiet that I screamed the loudest. Every class, I looked for an excuse to quit. But oddly enough, I kept going. Something kept pulling me back. Maybe it was habit, maybe stubbornness, or maybe deep down, I knew it still wasn't too late, that even with a weathered heart, it could still beat differently. And so it began, hesitantly, almost unwillingly, inside a heated pool, surrounded by cheerful older ladies and echoes of 80s music. I had no idea, but I was about to dive into something much deeper than water aerobics. I had no clue that in that very place, where I thought nothing could ever surprise me again, my body and soul were about to relearn how to swim. And before I tell you what happened next, tap the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps this story reach someone else who might need a reminder that it's never too late to fall in love again. On the 3rd class, just when I had come to terms with the fact that I was now a regular in the water aerobics group, he walked in. Don't ask me how I hadn't noticed him before. Maybe because at first, I was more focused on not slipping than looking around. But that day, he stepped into the water like someone who knew exactly the kind of effect he had. With a calmness that seemed rehearsed, he descended the steps slowly, letting the water rise over him little by little, unrushed, like he was part of that pool's scenery. But he was anything but subtle. I was adjusting the strap of my cap when I noticed the ripple of movement. It wasn't the water that warmed up. It was me. My gaze was drawn to him like my body knew, before my mind did, that something had shifted. His hair was gray, but not messy. That kind of gray that only makes a man look better with age. Broad shoulders, upright posture, and a smile. Oh, that smile. From the corner of his mouth, almost ironically, like someone who already knew he was being watched. And he did know. He looked in my direction with such ease it completely disarmed me. "Morning, good," he said, his voice deep and gentle, as if it were just a casual greeting. But to me, it sounded like the crack of breaking glass. I replied with a shy nod, maybe even a little awkward. I can't remember if I smiled, but I remember exactly how it felt to be seen again after so long, and that alone was already terrifying. While the instructor explained the next movements, my stubborn eyes kept going back to him. He was paying attention, but every now and then, he glanced at me too. Not in an invasive way, more like someone recognizing something familiar, even if they'd never seen it before. It was strange, and yet comforting, as if he knew something I didn't yet. During one of the water walking exercises, we passed close to each other. I felt the subtle motion of his arms, the ripple that touched my skin. It was delicate, but inside me, it felt like thunder. Who is this man? I thought, trying to hide the warmth rising in my face. I couldn't remember the last time I had felt this, that restless stirring, a blend of nervousness and curiosity. After class, while I was wrapping myself in a towel, still half dazed, I heard his voice again. "You're new here, aren't you?" "Sort of, new to the class, but I passed 50 a while ago," I joked, trying to sound casual. He laughed, a laugh that tasted like a story worth hearing. "Then we have something in common. I only joined this class because my daughter insisted, said I needed to move more. I thought she meant my body, but now I think she was talking about my heart. And in that moment, I knew. The water in that pool could hide a lot of things, but it wouldn't hide what was starting to grow there. I just didn't realize yet how deeply it would move me. The next day, I arrived at class with my heart a little more restless than usual. I tried to play it cool, but the truth was, I was waiting for him. And when Franklin walked in again, with that same calm confidence, I felt something in my stomach that I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't hunger. It was something older, and somehow new. During the initial stretch, the instructor asked us to pair up. "If you don't have a partner, find someone nearby," she called out, full of cheer. I instinctively looked to my side, and he was already there, beside me, hand slightly extended. "Mind if I be your partner today?" he asked, smiling lightly, almost like a joke, but I knew it wasn't. Not completely. I nodded with a timid smile, trying to keep my composure while the water masked my racing heart. We started the arm exercises, facing each other. Sometimes our fingers touched under the water, accidentally, or maybe not. The touch was soft, nearly imperceptible, but inside me, it stirred something so intense I tried to hide it with silly jokes. "This instructor really thinks we're still 20, huh?" I said with a laugh, trying not to show how my skin reacted every time he got too close. "And who says we're not?" he replied, with that look that completely undid me. I didn't know what was happening to me. It felt like every little movement between us held symbolic weight, like the small steps in the shallow end of that pool were part of something deeper, a different kind of dive, more intimate. Sometimes when I raised my arms or twisted my body, he mirrored me, attentive, not in a correcting or judging way, but like someone dancing along without music, simply feeling the rhythm of the other. "Have you always been this calm?" I asked, during a moment, when the instructor got distracted, explaining a new move. He looked at me in a way that made the water feel even warmer. "No, but with you here, it feels easier to slow down." I had no words. Me, who always had a clever remark ready, a witty comeback, could only smile and look away in that moment. And even as I looked away, I knew he was still there, watching me, respecting my silence, but fully present. It was strange to feel so much from so little, but maybe it wasn't so little. Maybe it was exactly those small things, the glances, the gestures, the touches hidden beneath the water, that had begun to fill a space inside me I thought was long forgotten. As we left class, the sky was already hinting at rain. I was just finishing putting on my coat when I heard that voice that, over the past few days, had already become familiar. "Did you walk here?" Franklin asked, car keys in hand and a soft smile on his face. I nodded. "I live nearby, about 15 minutes on foot, if I don't get distracted by the trees. Want a ride? Before this rain decides to turn into a storm?" I hesitated for a second. It was just a ride, wasn't it? But my stubborn heart didn't see it that way. It felt like an invitation, like a step, like a sign. And I said yes. In the car, the radio played an old song, one of those that seemed to brush the dust off forgotten memories. He adjusted the volume, and for a few seconds, only the music filled the space between us. It wasn't silence. It was a pause, like someone gathering themselves before saying something that matters. "You seem like someone who carries a lot of stories," he said, eyes on the rearview mirror, but attention fully on me. I chuckled softly. "At 59, you either become a book or go a little mad. And your book, does it have happy chapters?" I thought for a moment before answering. "It does. And also some torn out pages, angry scribbles, blank spaces, but there's beauty in it, even in the messy parts." He smiled. "I like that." The conversation flowed with an ease I had forgotten was possible. We talked about our kids, music, old movies, even food. He revealed an unexpected talent for making lasagna. But it was the way he looked at me between topics that said the most. A look with no rush, no expectations, just presence, like someone who wants to see, not just look. "How long has it been since you walked hand in hand with someone?" he asked suddenly, almost like he was talking to himself. "Years," I admitted, before realizing my voice had come out softer than usual. "Sometimes I can't even remember what it felt like. I just know I miss it." He didn't answer, but he didn't need to. As we turned onto my street, a wave of memories washed over me. I'd walked that road so many times alone, my thoughts heavier than my steps. But in that moment, even in silence, I felt accompanied. "It's right here," I said, pointing. The car came to a gentle stop in front of my building, like it was pulling up to the edge of a secret. The street was empty, quiet, and the rain, that had threatened to pour, settled into a shy drizzle, as if even the sky was holding space for that moment. "You live here?" he asked, glancing at the old brick facade with curiosity, but never crossing a line. "Since the divorce," I replied without much thought. Only after the words left my mouth did I feel their weight. It was like I had opened a door beyond the garage, beyond the apartment, a door I'd been avoiding myself. Franklin didn't answer right away. He just nodded softly, like someone who understands more than they let on. We sat in silence for a few seconds, the engine off, the music gone. But there was still a sound in the air, something between a sigh and a heartbeat. Then he turned slightly toward me, his eyes locked into mine, and asked in a low voice, almost a whisper, "Do you remember what it feels like to be kissed against a wall?" The question struck like lightning on a cloudy day. It caught me off guard, and yet, it didn't feel aggressive or inappropriate. It felt real, like a memory that had been there all along, sleeping, waiting for someone brave enough to call it by name. I could have laughed, changed the subject, made a joke, but I didn't. I felt my face flush, my heart race, and I answered in the most honest way I could. "I don't remember." And then, looking straight into his eyes, I added, "Show me." Right there, at that doorway, between the wet street behind me and the rug at my feet. I stood suspended between the past that had shaped me and the present that was inviting me to begin again. I felt the weight of all my lived years, of old loves, of quiet disappointments, but I also felt something different, something alive. It was a brief moment, but long enough for every version of myself. The wounded woman, the mother, the grandmother, the friend who always has advice for everyone else but hides her own pain, to come together in one single longing, to be seen again, to be felt again, to be chosen, not out of loneliness, but out of connection. And in that moment, in that unexpected question, I realized it wasn't just about desire. It was about courage, about allowing someone to see beyond the surface, beyond the body, beyond the story, about trusting that, even after all the missteps, it was still possible to dance. He didn't step closer, not right then, but his gaze wrapped around me like a silent embrace, and when I said goodnight, softly, almost in a whisper, knew that whatever had begun there wouldn't end at that door. Franklin didn't kiss my lips, not yet, but with that question, he touched something no one had touched in a long time, my courage to feel again. I walked slowly up the stairs of my building, trying to understand what had just happened. It wasn't just his question, or even my answer. It was everything. The stillness of time, my body reawakening, my mind scrambling to catch up with my heart. When I closed the door to my apartment, I leaned my back against it and took a deep breath. For a moment, I let my fingers run along the skin of my arm, as if testing the texture of my new bravery. The next day, the rain had gone, but he hadn't. He was there, as always, as if the night before had left something suspended in the air, waiting to be finished. We did the class, smiled at each other, but said little. It was only at the end, when he offered me another ride, that the silence finally turned into words. "No rain today, but I'm starting to think what you really enjoy is my company, huh?" "I won't lie, it's better than walking home alone," I teased, trying to keep the tone light. But inside, everything was stirring. In the car, there was no music, just the sound of the street and our breathing. When he pulled up in front of my building, he didn't turn off the engine. He just looked at me. "Lorraine, can I come up?" My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't hesitate. "You can." The key turned in the lock, and for a second, I felt 18 again, like I was sneaking a boyfriend into the house behind my parents' backs. Only this time, there was no fear. There was choice. There was maturity and desire. He stepped inside slowly, honoring every corner of the space, like he was asking permission even from the air. We stood in silence for a few moments. Then he came closer. His hands touched my face like they had been made for it. Steady, but tender. Like someone holding something precious, not fragile. "Are you sure?" whispered. His lips barely a breath away from mine. "I am." And when he kissed me, something inside me shattered. Or maybe it finally broke free. It wasn't a rushed kiss, nor one born of need. It was full of intention, full of memory, as if time had waited for that exact moment to give back everything I thought I'd lost. My senses woke up one by one. The warmth of his touch, the chill on my skin, the urge to surrender. And I did. There, between the living room and the hallway wall, pressed like against the movie I never would have written for myself, I rediscovered who I was. As a woman, as a body, as desire, as life. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about reclaiming something I had long believed I left behind. And when he held me afterward in silence, I knew that night wasn't an ending. It was a rebirth. He didn't just kiss me against the wall. He showed me that even with time passing, there was still so much inside me that wanted to and could bloom. Next morning, I woke up before my alarm. The early light slipped softly through the gaps in the curtains, as if it knew my body was still processing the night before. I stayed in bed for a while, listening to the quiet of the apartment, but I didn't feel lonely. It was a different kind of quiet, a quiet that was full. I touched my lips, almost without thinking. I could still taste Franklin's kiss, but more than that, I could feel myself in a way I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just about him. It was about me, about the woman who had been asleep under so many layers for so long, the devoted mother, the present grandmother, the strong, dependable woman. But that night, I was simply Lorraine, with desire, with soul, with skin. I got up slowly, made my coffee, and caught my reflection in the kitchen mirror. Something looked different. The face was the same as yesterday, but the eyes were alive. They sparkled, not because of a man, but because of what that moment had given back to me. Because you see, it wasn't just about pleasure. It was about presence, about allowing yourself, about opening the door to something new. Even with all the scars, the fears, and the insecurities that come with age, I always thought that, at a certain point in life, we just learn to live with absence. But no one teaches you how to handle the return, the feeling of feeling again, of wanting again. And I did want, not just him, but myself. I wanted to be lighthearted, to laugh, wanted to see myself as beautiful, desirable, alive. And that's what that night gave me. It didn't reinvent me. It brought me closer to who I had once been, and who I still was. I spent the day remembering the details, the touch, the whispered laughter, the way he held me afterward like he had all the time in the world. That stayed with me more than any words, because in that moment, I understood. It wasn't just about the body, it was about time, and his time, he offered to me completely. No shortcuts, no games, just him and me. And it doesn't matter what happens next, whether he stays, whether this grows, whether it's brief or lasting. What matters is that I allowed it. And in doing so, I reclaimed something I didn't even realize I had lost. That morning, as I poured my coffee into my favorite cup, I smiled to myself, and I thought, good thing I went to that pool. Because sometimes we dive in thinking we're just getting some exercise, and we end up learning how to live again. And age? Oh my dear, age isn't a limit. It's just proof that we're still here, still ready to feel, ready to love, ready to bloom. If this story touched your heart, even just a little, I'd love for you to subscribe and leave a like. It's not just for me. It's for every Lorraine out there who thinks it's too late to live something beautiful. Every click helps this story go further. And maybe, just maybe, rekindle the spark in someone who was just waiting for a sign.